I'm excited to be here. Although I'm in the computer science department, I realize that it's just a small part of an economy that only works when everyone actually cooperates. So if anyone wants to cooperate with me or tell me more about their experience, I'm around after. I'd love to talk. But my work is on AI tools for creative work. One of my passions is how can technology make people more productive? And this goes way back because post-World War II, pre-World War II, computers were just tools for calculation. People were plugging things in, getting numbers out, and that worked pretty well. Positive outcome, World War II, we won. Spoiler alert. But then post-World War II, there was this vision of computers that they could be tools to augment human intelligence. And if you look at this, it is now a desk. This computer is surrounding the human being. What the actual task is, say you're a lawyer, and it's bringing patent cases to you. It's trying to capture your context and your work and trying to support you. And this was a totally new vision. And this vision has almost totally been achieved by the internet. So that's exciting. But what's really going on is that these visions of having computers augment us can make us more productive by putting the tools and resources at our fingertips. And this is a strong concept in the arts. In cooking, it's called mise en place. Idea that if you have all the stuff in front of you, then when there's something burning on the stove, you can take care of it and come back to your place and have all your working memory intact. So with tools and resources at our fingertips, we can focus on combining them. True in cooking, any kind of building, mechanical engineering, also true in music and the arts. Great American painter there. Okay. Happy trees, no mistakes. What this is really called is fluid intelligence, the ability to combine pieces in new and novel ways. It's a component of creative problem solving, and it's everywhere. I do it in software design, in events it happens, in product design. And what's really important to focus on this is because and productivity and how computers can support us, because I feel like technology often fragments our context. I know this morning I had to deal with somebody's excuse for why they couldn't do a homework, and then somebody's request for something else, and then an alert about this, and then news about that, and each one I paid attention to for about 3 seconds, and I didn't get very deep into each one, and each one was like, do I give this person an excuse? I had to think about what was the context for that, what they'd talked about before. I often make a lot of mistakes when this happens. So technology it's called fragmenting our context, bringing us little bits of people, but they're not related. And so we can't actually put all the pieces in our working memory and do this mise en place thing. So what I really want to know is how AI as a new technology can help augment our fluid intelligence. This is my research, this is my work, and there's sort of two pieces to this puzzle. First is you want to gather relevant resources so you have them at your fingertips. Second, you want tools to easily combine the resources. And then lastly, a coherent context to combine the resources and tools in multiple ways. So we can combine them, and we can gather tools, and we can get. So in order to study this sort of creative and productivity things, I had to pick a problem. I wanted to pick a design problem, something that was no obvious solution, but I could run many, many times. I really wanted something creative. But if you pick I want to write the great American novel, not so great to do experiments on. Very few of those are written, kind of like by definition, one in a century. But one day I was searching for creative ads, and this sort of thing came up. All ads are intensely visual, but they're conveying a message. So like the first one, like McDonald's has Wi-Fi, Red Bull gives you energy. This audience will remember all the Absolute Vodka ads from the 90s. But even like public service announcements like smoking kills, Starbucks is here for Christmas, Nike Air, like lungs, air, okay, you get it. Anyway, so this is, yeah, there's one. And the sneakers, yeah, and that's exactly it. And you see these pieces, you're trying to figure it out, then you get the connection and the message. It's exactly what these are. They're called visual metaphors. They're images that convey a message symbolically. They're used all over the place. The cover of The Economist almost always has one. So like, here's a symbol of Brazil blended with a symbol of something else that takes off. So advertisements like you saw, so something like Tabasco is so hot that you'll need help putting it out. That's Tabasco and heat. Also public service announcements. So this one has no text accompanying it, but it's about global warming, that the Earth is melting. All right, so many use cases for these. Here we go. And then my challenge is, can we create visual metaphors for a new message? So we know that they're going to have these symbols. So first we have to, first challenge, gather resources to have at your fingertips. So what's hard about this is that for an abstract concept, we want to find concrete objects. So for summer, we want to find things like the sun. And so there are tools like Google search. If you search for for summer on Google, you'll get a lot of summery images, but they're all scenery, or they say summer. They're not actually visual symbols. So we need to take things like this and actually extract out of them just the symbols in a simple way. So my grad student has built an application that uses artificial intelligence on top of knowledge graphs to help find many concrete objects for an abstract term. So here's a little video of that happening. So you start with summer, and it's pulling up things that it thinks that are associated and it thinks is relevant images, but still you are picking the actual images and also selecting sort of what path to go down next. But it's helping you continually, I don't know, we use the word flare and focus, so like come up with a lot of things before you decide on one. You can traverse many things. It's giving you like an overall path of what you've chosen, and it's finding it's finding the flip-flops, the umbrella, the beach ball, the palm tree, so it's going to keep going, different connotations, or the barbecue, different kind of summer association. What's this last one? Yeah, barbecue tongues. Anyway, giving you a nice way where you can really just focus on this one task. Keep going. So once we have these symbols, we need to provide tools to combine them. This is actually quite hard because if you look at this, what symbols should we combine? There's really no rules for doing it. It's not simple. It's like just, take the first thing that you Google when it comes to Brazil, first thing for takes off. That's not going to work. How do you get them to blend together? So we give first a conceptual tool, and that is that objects are going to combine if they share a shape. So the ice cream and the Earth go together because both have a sphere. This means that both objects are going to be visible and they're going to appear blended together. So let me show you some examples of this. Here's a little tool. Humans doing it so it's slower, but we automate this. What shape is the Tabasco bottle? Well, it's a cylinder, and in 2D, that's just a square. So this is where that rectangle is. The fire extinguisher is also a very complicated object, but the main part of it is also a cylinder. So if we mask that out and show it as, okay, maybe we want to cheat up a little bit, and this is how these could go together at a first pass. Another example, just to get this in. So this is a public service announcement for turn off and your cell phone. So the light switch in the off position is the symbol for off, and it's a rectangle. Cell phone is also a rectangle. But if we mask that out, there's going to be a problem. And that is that when we get the whole object masked, you can't actually see any of the iPhones. The solution is that you need to find a different rectangle that's internal, such as the screen. So here, if we just mask the screen, this is the public service announcement that actually ran. So this is the pattern. So now we have a tool for combining things, and next challenge is to create a coherent context to explore multiple solutions. So I'll show you first a cartoon of how this works. If you're trying to combine Starbucks and summer, you first need to figure out what are a bunch of things that represent Starbucks. Store, Frappuccino, green aprons. You find those images that represent it, what shape those images have, and whether it's all or part of the object. You need to also do that for the other side of the system. This is what this knowledge graph is doing for you semi-automatically. Shapes, symbols, whether it's all or part of it. Now that we have all the tools and all the resources at our finger, you can use the tools to automatically select which ones will fit the pattern and come together. And now, if it doesn't work, you sort of evaluate if it looks good, and you could go back and iterate if it didn't. But this is the first pass. And hold on, though. There's a little bit of and then there's a whole system that does this. And each part is part human and part computer, trying to support and augment people's abilities. But we found that replacing them doesn't quite work. Anyway, but this is just really producing that first stage, and there's a second challenge, is it just combining the aesthetics of the blend to look a little bit better, to go from this Starbucks where it's green, and the yellow just looks a little bit more blended to people. So there's been a lot of hoopla, some deserved, some not, about what AI can do. And so I was really impressed about 5 years ago when we took a picture of the Mona Lisa, trained a model on Van Gogh's Starry Night, and out it came a Mona Lisa that sort of looked like Van Gogh took a crack at it. Maybe. So this is called deep style transfer. Published in CVPR. I'm like, hey, well, maybe this would work. Maybe that's all we have to do to combine objects. Maybe this is the tool that we need. So for an ad about finding a way to make burgers healthy, like apples, there's two objects that go together. We applied this deep style transfer to it. We've got that apple, we've got its style, we're going to apply it. We took the burger, we applied its apple. You ready for what the AI did? Boom, brown apple. Okay. Is this as good as we can do, everybody? So I actually paid a real artist to do this in like just 20 minutes, just like, what could you do? This is what he produced. A much better blend. All right, so one of the things he did is he took apart the burger, and he's like, oh, let me blend just the bun part of it. So I was like, okay, well, let's do that. Let's get the style of the apple skin and just say we know how to isolate the burger. What's AI going to do there? Boom, red bun on a burger. And then when you look closer at the comparison between these two, there's a lot of things that he's done to make this, that the artist has done to make this aesthetic. Because style is surface level. We are doing more than just transferring style. You need world knowledge to know that you can take apart that some apples are red and some are yellow, that they can have slightly different shapes, and to just improve that fit piece by piece and try it in many different ways. So how are we going to improve these blends? So what I didn't share with you is like, how do we actually, so if you were, I want to talk about the human visual system. How does it recognize an object? Because this is what the game we're playing with. So you know this is ice cream, but deep inside your brain, there's also a neural network that's using two things to figure this out. First, it just looks at shape, which is why we blend on shape first. Because without the silhouette of this object, no one will figure out what it is. But then secondary, so now we know it's ice cream, but now we're going to figure out what kind it is, and to do the secondary parts of evaluation, it looks at three things, sort of in parallel: color, silhouette, and details. And so those are the three things that we are going to use to build tools around: a color tool, a silhouette tool, a details tool, to help improve the quality of the blends. So here's just this example of Starbucks. So remember the two images that we combined into the first pass blend. And so we can look at which object we want on top, the green one and the yellow one, probably the green one. And then we can automatically produce some versions of different color options, and then give people sliders to see what they think is better. So it's pretty good, but it's got some green lit yet, so I'm going to increase the yellow there. This one, maybe we want to go less. Nope, not that, too green. Maybe we want to go more. Oh, lots of yellow. But now I've got them all in front of me, just like I'm cooking, do this mise en place, and I'm like, this one, that's the best in this bunch. This is a pretty simple example. Here's a different ad for Legos and summer vacation. This was the original first pass blend, which is okay, but can we improve it? So it's going to select the silhouette of the ice cream, of the popsicle, and then also pick a color blend. So it's got both these things going on. So it's looking at the transparency. Maybe that's not great. I think I actually want to multiply the colors. Do I want to add any details? No, this is good. This is done. So you just look and make sure, like, yeah, is this an improvement? It is. All right. So one more complicated one. This is for advertising, like oranges are here at winter time, because they come from Peru. So first you get to pick the silhouette. We definitely want this one. Now we're going to do this color blending. So we look at that orange skin. Okay, that's nice. No, that looks rotten. Not that. So this has those nice shadows. But we really want his face back. So how can we do that very quickly? So we have this interactive tool where you just say, here's sort of where the details are. Can you just put them back? So very quick tools to help you. And we look at it again and we're like, yeah, I think this is getting better. So I'll just show you blends made by real groups at universities for ads they wanted to run. One for the newspaper, which was an article about football being dangerous, because it's something about concussions and sort of thing. Joe's Coffee on campus is going to be open late, so mixing that with a Milky Way. An ad for washing your hands being the smart thing to do to avoid the flu. We put this up in the engineering department where these Meier flasks mean smart. This was the article about the burgers being healthy, ad about orange juice keeping you strong, and last, and maybe least actually, was the philosophy department's Christmas party. and here's where we really needed help coming up with what is a good symbol of philosophy, because like Plato's face just wasn't cutting it, and so they had to come up with that, and of course, you know, let's make the gingerbread man decide. Anyway, so we made this tool available and people were using it, but we really wanted to study, like, does this increase productivity? So we want to see with and without this tool, how long is it going to take to make the comparable blends? So we were focusing mostly on novices, but we have tried this with experts. So spoiler alert, we actually made novices 10 times better with the system. So we ran 2 different studies. First where the novices sit down and they use, they just do it by themselves first. How many blends can they make within this time frame of, I think it was 5 or 10 minutes? Here they were making about half a blend, which made a lot of people, half the people made none, and some people, by some miracle, made 1. If those same people, put the system in front of them, and they're making 5.5 in the same time for 4 different concepts. But there's this possibility that maybe they're just learning how to do it. Like maybe the doing it by themselves was the warm-up. So we reversed the conditions. Like a different group of people, give them the system, how many do they make? Oh, they're still making 5.5. That's good. This makes sense. The system does make everything faster. But now maybe they've learned like the tricks. Maybe if you know conceptually how to cook, you don't need the mise en place anymore. You don't need any of the tools. You can just sort of compile it all in your head. Turns out that is not true. You take away the tool, these people have the training, and they go right back down to about making half of a blend each. And that's because this task is hard, and you're just smarter when you have all the tools in front of you. So I'll just show you some examples of how things go wrong. So one was an ad in the test set for biking is the smart commute. So it's bike and smart. Here's what a novice did, unassisted. They got a bike in there. Einstein's smart, throw his face on there if anyone sees it. There's this A+ just sort of riding in the front of the cart for whatever reason. And instead, with the system, I came up with this, using the trigonometry circle as smart and just the bike wheel, not the whole bike itself. So, and this is consistent with the design literature that novices will get stuck improving, in air quotes, their first idea. But the system in the context supports multiple solutions and then picking the best. So in computer science, I'd say instead of doing depth-first search, you do breadth-first search. I'm sure this concept's familiar to you guys, but some other word for it. Don't go with the first idea you have. It usually sucks. That's another way to put it. OK, so another example was an ad for New York, sort of the city that never sleeps, so New York and night. So users unassisted did this, which has got the right 2 symbols, but they just don't go together. It'd be very hard to push these together. They've got different shapes. There's that whole shape matching thing they've not quite got down yet. But instead, with the system, keep going, find more symbols, put more things together, and it came up with this. So you can ride the subway anytime at night. OK, so finding the resources isn't enough. You actually need the tools to put them together in the same place, because that's important as well. So I'll just talk a little bit of the current work we're doing on this exact same system is taking, so I'll just show you. Here's an ad. This is not one we created. This is a real ad made by a professional person. I don't know really what it's about, but IBM, food and space at IBM, who knows. But we're taking these ads and saying, how can we enhance them? Here is one way you can do that. Just by adding a little bit of motion to it. Here he is, this astronaut, just bumping around the screen. And we know that motion draws attention and increases conversion rate, at least on Facebook ads, by 17%, which is a lot. And there are tools out there to combine motion, but if this wasn't already obvious, not all motion is created equal. You can just have them bobbing up and down there, and it will attract your attention, but is that really what you want your brand to do, is just attract attention at all costs? No, because this is just random motion, and we want to have characteristic motion. That's what makes it meaningful, because it's related to how the astronaut moves. That's what makes this better. And the motion itself is quite simple, but it's the meaning that's deep, and that's where the value add is. So we first went and just did this to a bunch of examples. So like Legos and imagination, here's a real ad, and all you have to do is make it fly. Simple, linear motion, but it adds something to it. And the plane flying just shows how the Legos inspire the imagination. I don't usually get to show this one, but I do today. Here's an ad for Always Elite Guard Protection, the original ad, and here it is, physically showing how effective the protection is. Okay, so, and so how can AI help us do this? Here is the approach that we've taken, is you take an ad and you find, okay, so this is McDonald's, it's a fish hook. What's the obvious motion here is fishing, so you get a reference video, and then we can try to extract the motion that the object makes and then reapply it to the target image. Now, I will say that in reapplying it to the target image, you almost always have to edit it a little bit, because you can never just like pick up a solution here and properly just dump it somewhere else. You have to adjust. So here's another example of that, is for the reference video for the astronaut was him like floating, and then he just this GIF thing where he just goes back to the beginning. So we wanted the speed of that motion, just the property of speed, but not actually the path it takes. So we wanted to define our own path. So that's how you may want to take one property of the video, but change others to suit your needs. Another thing you can do here is here's an ad for Lipton and drink it in the morning, I guess this is the real ad. And so one of the motion you do with the tea bag is the dip, dip, dip. So you can add that. That's kind of exciting. And we could have considered ourselves done, but we wanted to see, can we iterate on this again? What other kind of motion is there? So if we take our original motion and say, okay, well, we've used the tea bag, like what other symbolism is in there? Well, it's the sun. What motion does the sun make? Well, it actually has this gradient change. And we can take that and just improve the ad a little bit so that as she dips up the tea, the sun gradient changes to see like it's rising in the background. Anyway, so these animated blends is one of the places this is going next, and AI is used to extract the key objects and then reapply them. So another tool for putting things together. Since this is an event about women in tech a little bit, I wanted to share a story that I never really get to share. Is that, so this is Jamie Teven. She's chief scientist at Microsoft. She is also Lydia Chilton's mentor. I knew her before she was famous, so that's how I know. And we were talking one day, and I said, you know, students keep asking for my permission to do projects. They want my opinion on whether an idea will work, and this was annoying to me. I just kept telling them, you just need to try it. Like, I don't know if your startup idea is good or bad, and even if it's bad, you should probably do it and find something out. You're 19, like, you'll figure it out. And she gave me this great advice. She had the same of, sometimes you have to empower people. You can make them realize there's something they can get done today. And I'm like, this thought just isn't obvious to people. So in my capacity as a teacher, I find that my job is to empower students. This semester, and the one before, so Leslie Cordero runs DevFest, which is a big software group on campus, and they have basically a hackathon. And all I have to do is tell, like, yes, you can do this, you can do this. What, you need me to book a room, you got some bureaucratic thing, you got me to yell at somebody, like, I'll do it. You make a mistake, you need to blame it on someone, I can blame it, just do it. Get out there and do it. Another one coming up soon is that Priya Pai is leading this public interest technology is a sort of emerging field. The Ford Foundation and New America are supporting us in this. But how do we design productive civic engagement? How do we get undergrads into this? Because students really want to use tech for good. And think about what that means. Not only what does it mean and the ethical debates that I honestly don't know how to have, but how do we do it? That is far more interesting to me. And lastly, this work is about design. And design is really an upcoming thing that students want to learn more about, want to get careers in. They really don't know how at Columbia yet. And so I tell them, if you have this problem, you group of students, you should fix it for yourselves. I will book rooms and gather speakers and do things like this, being led by a Barnard sophomore, helping teach design at Columbia, and it's just everyone we tell about wants to join the committee to do it. So these are all, and I didn't have to do anything other than tell people you can do it. So that's great. I'm very good at delegating now, something I did not learn during my PhD. And then I also have a lot of collaborators. And I want to point out that a lot of them just happen to be female. This isn't something that I do intentionally. Obviously, I don't know what goes on in their heads and why they choose this, but I will say, like, all the things that happened to me that made me want to quit my PhD and quit computer science, I just don't do those things. That's it. That's my secret. Okay. So just to summarize my talk, technology can make us more productive by putting the tools and resources at our fingertips. This is true in the arts, and it's also true in software development, organization, any knowledge production task. And although technology often fragments our context and our attention, which makes us not as good at our job, not as good as connecting the pieces, AI can augment our fluid intelligence, give us the resources, give us the tools, and provide us with we can design a coherent context to help put them all together. Okay. So all these pieces. This was the one task that I showed it for, visual metaphors. It involves finding symbols. We used knowledge bases and AI to figure out what's relevant to summer, but also concrete. And there were tools for blending, so first just matching the shapes, and then doing the secondary thing like color, silhouette, details, and then a coherent context that puts them all together. It really looks like this. And to get a 10x improvement. Those are rare. If I had another 10x improvement, I would have told you about that today. But it really is because of this fluid intelligence property that we have, is fundamental to the way that we think. Okay? And I talked about future work on animated blends, also using AI, but really, these techniques are very general, and I think they can be used to support any design task, and I'm doing it now with software, with public interest technology, and with design tasks. So great, thank you.
Thanks so much. So note to myself, I should never talk after Lydia ever again, because what I'm going to talk about seems like very boring compared to what she just did. There is no videos, just a heads up. There are very, very few pictures at all. It's mainly text. So what I'm really interested nowadays, so I'm an economist, and I'm much more interested now in what creates meaning at work. How does that affect kind of how we motivate our employees, how that interacts with strategy? That's what I teach in our program. This particular project that I'm talking about is with two of my colleagues, Vanessa Bourbano, she's in the management division, and Nicolas Padilla, he's in marketing. And it's about gender and job choices. So when you just start Googling and look for pictures of you typing jobs and gender, you get like the male executive and the female nurse, all those stereotypes all over the internet. In fact, if you look within movies, and here's not my data, but like a study who looked from 95 to 2015, it's a very gendered pictures of what jobs look like. Now that obviously should be fixed, but I'm not talking about that. What is unfortunately true is that there is this segregation into different jobs by gender. And it actually explains part of the gender wage gap. So when you look at the gender wage gap, there are at least 4 things which are sad, but unfortunately true. One is while it's decreasing to a certain degree, it's still very, very pervasive. It's even within the same job and industry, which points to some discrimination that's going on there, which has to be fixed. It's especially in high-paying jobs. While the gender wage gap decreases somehow on the lower end of the wage distribution, it is not that much on high-paying jobs. And partially, it's explained by that segregation of men and women into different jobs and industries. So when you just look at our MBA, MBAs and see where they're going. This is data for the cohort that just finished in 2019. It's like man and female actually segregate in different industries. The most important segregation is there are far fewer female who go into finance. There's like a 15 percentage point gap in how many, so 46% of our male MBAs go into finance, while only 31% of the female go into the finance industry. Finance being, of course, the industry which has the highest paying, is the highest paying industry. So if you look then over their careers, there is this gender wage gap, partially because females don't go into finance as much. Now, you could just be fine with that and say, like, well, that's just how it is. Or you can think about, how can we change this? How can we potentially think about that, you know, if you're in finance and you really want, and you often hear executives say that, we want to increase diversity, how do you do that? Now, that, of course, depends on what drives this in the first place. You know, and there are potential reasons for that segregation. You know, one has to do with just monetary aspects. There might be discrimination going on. There is a larger wage penalty for disrupting careers in certain industries than in others. You know, there are different promotion patterns in some or the others. That then leads to some culture, and so on, and so on, and so on. And we obviously need to fix that. I'm not going to offer a solution today about how to fix that, but that's what we want. Another quite different aspect is maybe man and female differ in how they care about different job attributes. You know, when you think about the job, and as an economist, you know, I'm trained there is income, and that's what drives people to choose and to put effort. There are many, many other aspects of the job. You know, there's flexibility, there is some sort of a culture, not the culture that makes you be promoted and have a greater career, but just how it is structured. There is some meaning in the work, and there are many, many of those aspects. I'm going to now try something out. I actually have to take out your cell phone. I'm going to ask you, what is important for you in a job? So this is a survey. You can just take the QR or type in the address, and I'm going to ask you to rate those different job attributes for yourself. So when you're in the app, you should see those attributes, and you can move them up and down in how important they are for you. So I give you a couple of minutes. Does it work? So I give you a couple of minutes to just tell me what is on top, what is at the bottom of those different attributes for you personally. Once you're fine with your ranking, you just submit. Okay. I guess you're good? Okay. I think we have some critical mass. So can you just show the results? No? Yeah. Okay. So income seems important. It's like second. Then there is like an interesting job, which is more about what the job, the impact you're having on the job. There are like some, you know, Job security seems to be important, help others, and so on and so on and so on. Now, what is now important and what I've tried to show you now, is there a difference in how men and women answer those? Now, of course, in this room, that's going to be a little harder to do because the majority is female. But I want to keep those, for you to keep those questions in mind, because I'm going to show you data on like how a lot of other people answered that question and what that means. First of all, you know, when you think about the job in general, you can classify a job in kind of the job attributes in kind of 3 types. You know, there are those monetary aspects, you know, income, job security, promotion, whatever. There's something about the job design. You know, independent what the company does, you know, you can be in a gun manufacturing firm or like in a children's hospital. You know, what is the impact that you have on a daily basis? How much autonomy do you have? I would characterize that as job design. And there is kind of the purpose. You know, that depends, of course, on your value system. But, you know, is a children's hospital, as in my view, of course, a lot of purpose. Gun manufacturer, maybe not as much. So the question is now, are there any differences between men and women in those different attributes? So this is, again, this study I mentioned. So what we did is we looked at the survey across the globe. This is a survey that I didn't do that has like 4 waves, about 130,000 people, 47 countries that ask that same question. It wasn't a ranking, but it asked you for all those attributes, how important is it in a job? And then we took the proportion of man and female who say it is very important, that particular attribute, and subtracted like the man and the female. So I'm going to show you now the gender differences in those different attributes. For monetary attributes, for job designs, and for purpose. And what you see is there are differences, but most of the differences do not come from monetary aspects. Why would they? You know, if you ask men and women how much do you care about money, yeah, they all care about money in the same way. You know, if you ask them about how interesting the job is, they all want like an interesting job. Flexibility, which is an aspect that gets discussed a lot, you're going to see sort of the difference. 4.8 percentage point more women say that flexibility is important in the job. But the biggest difference comes from those purpose attributes. Like, is it helpful or is it useful for society? That's where, across those 130,000 people across the globe, that's where the differences really kick in. How I would summarize that, you know, there is like gender differences in preference for meaning at work. And it's very universal. Now you ask me, where does that come from? I don't know. But one way to maybe look at this is in the same study, see whether you look at richer countries. You know, if countries develop more, does the difference get larger or smaller? Is if education goes up, so in educated subgroups, does the gender differences become bigger and smaller? And you see that for both, it's going to be more pronounced. First of all, it's more pronounced in richer countries. If you look in countries that are not that developed, GDP per capita is relatively low, there are very few differences. The differences only kick in when countries get richer. So here is for helpful for others. And you see here the GDP per capita regressed against the gender differences. So being positive means like more female rate that important. And you see when countries are poor, there is little differences. Only when they get richer, the differences kick in. That's true, you know, when you look for income, there is actually not that much movement. Whether rich or poor, it's kind of the same. But for all those other attributes, especially for purpose, in richer countries, the gender differences become bigger. That's very universal in other attributes as well. If you think about risk aversion, where there are gender differences, those gender differences only kick in when countries develop more. It's also much more pronounced in higher educated subgroups. So if you look at people who have college degrees and so on, there the differences really kick in. In subgroups with lower education, there are very, very few differences. You can see that here to a certain degree. Now that means that first of all, we probably expect if the trend is continuing that countries get richer, we get richer, and education is going up, that those differences become, if anything, more important than not. Now our MBA students probably should be, they're in a rich country and highly educated. So we should even see that in a relatively homogeneous subgroups. They're all very ambitious, all super smart. We should see those differences as well. So we looked at a full cohort of our MBA. So they're actually just graduated in 2019. 2 years before that, before they started their MBA, we kind of measured their preferences for jobs. We did a conjoint analysis known from marketing, where we asked them, in different scenarios, how important is income, how important is purpose here used as like a CSR, the impact you're having on a daily job, flexibility and status. This is before they started the MBA. And then we looked and observed them throughout the MBA. What courses do they take in their MBA? Where do they go after that? And can we explain part of the selection into different jobs by those preferences they're having? Turns out that what is true in those 130,000 people across the world is also true within our MBA students. So when you classify them, into different segments, one segment being the CSR impact-oriented, that about 35% of our female MBA students can be classified that way, while only about 20% of our male students can be classified that well. Meaning that like our MBA students care about those purpose attributes of a job much more than our male students do. Now the next question is does that explain, does differences in those preferences explain part of the selection into those different industries? Now there is going to be a good and the bad news, depending on what your prior is. So about those preferences, about 10 to 25% of the classes they take. Female take much less finance classes within our MBAs, and the post-MBA industry they select into. Now, the bad news is, well, depends on where you come from. It explains, you could say, that doesn't explain that much, 10% of the difference. Now, that just means there is a lot more to be done than that. If you go back to those reasons, there are many, many reasons why male and female select into different industries. The good news is there is an angle who potentially change how the selection is going to take care of, and it has to do with kind of those meaning attributes. Do you need to fix all those other? Of course. All those discrimination and whatever has to go away. But there is a different angle to thinking about how to potentially increase the diversity. I summarize it: make jobs more meaningful. Now, you ask, well, I'm a bank. I can't become a children's hospital. That's true. So, of course, it's going to be hard to do. It's probably going to be a stretch, and in my strategy class, I tell them not to do that. However, there are a lot of different aspects how to make even a banking industry more meaningful. If trust is any indicator, if you ask people how much you trust the banking industry, it doesn't look so good. In fact, banking, financial services, and banks are at the very bottom of if you look at trust. There is a lot of room for improvement to change this. By changing this, meaning that has a lot of different good attributes. It motivates people to work. It makes them happy. The job satisfaction goes up. But maybe, if you believe my research, the diversity issue will actually come with it as well to a certain degree. So that's all for me. I'm left a lot of room for questions. So you can ask me anything about this or anything else. Yes?
Thank you for that fascinating presentation. I enjoyed it. But have you found that people are raising their children differently, or whether that the female role is evolving less towards nurture? Because I see that women are still primarily child caregivers.
Yeah.
So I think your research involves some psychology. So are you seeing, if our society continues to develop females in a certain way, obviously I guess we're going to go towards more meaningful and impactful.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, so this is a very good question. You know, where does that actually come from? You know, sort of what is true. You know, I have research looking at like how do those job preferences develop. And one important aspect, this is not particular about gender, is like when you look back and when kids, well, like young adults were like 18 to 25, which psychologists call like the impressionable years. Those are like the years where we like develop our attitudes, preferences, and whatever. The macroeconomic environment in that period, if it's very good, you know, it changes kind of how you think about the job. Does like how you get grown up, does that affect that? I'm almost certain it does. Now, when you look at that correlation between GDP per capita and gender differences, you know, and you can run the same regression in taking like a UN Women's Rights Index and look at if that increases, does the differences get bigger or smaller? The difference actually get bigger. I'm not sure I've answered your question because I really don't know where it comes from. My hunch would be it does. You know, that once those different, you know, those stereotypes that I showed at the beginning also change, it probably changes part of it. Does it need to change? I'm not even sure. You know, I personally think it's a good thing that purpose is, you know, those are probably employees that you want to have. It's a diverse workforce that cares about different attributes, which is probably a good thing. Do we want to change that selection into? I think yes.
Have you looked into, or would you? Have you looked into, or would you consider in your research looking into, let's say everybody in not-for-profits is a proxy for people who want to help other people, and then looking at the gender split within not-for-profit in terms of pay equity and then also title and promotion?
Yeah.
Because maybe that.
I mean, what is extremely clear is that if you split the data I had and look at, you know, what's the gender split in nonprofits versus for-profit, it's very extreme. So there are way more females in the nonprofit sector than in the for-profit sector. If you look within our MBA students and classify classes as like socially oriented, you know, female are taking many more of those classes than men do.
But what I'm saying is something else. What I'm saying is some of, you know, gender pay equity, a lot of it is about women not progressing in their careers,
Yes.
women asking for raises and not getting them, women being told not to negotiate,
Yes.
women starting out $4,000 less out of the box, which grows to $800,000 over
Right.
their lifetime. So I'm asking you, like, if you take not-for-profits, and then I don't know how you do this because you're the economist, I'm not the economist, right? And you sort of try to make it apples to apples, male, female, and then look at what do the men get paid versus what do the women get paid, and then what kind of, you know, progress do you see? Because a lot of these, you know, CEOs at not-for-profits, a lot of them are male, a lot, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know,
Yeah. I mean, it's probably true. Unfortunately, I think in many, many industries, even for the same job, in the same industry, there is very different pay. You know, and this is partially how I would interpret that one as well. There is like, worst case scenario, 90% of the selection that gets explained by many other aspects. The culture, the career path that different industries, even within nonprofit, take. That has to be fixed very differently than what I'm talking about here. But the only thing I want to say is there is this other aspect of like non-monetary attributes that are also an important part of making sure that selection is not as extreme as it is today.
I just wanted to ask how much of this you think is awareness. I know that, you know, by the time that you get to college, you kind of have to have, at least when you're not come from a super wealthy background, the second you make a decision, it's kind of a decision that you have to be really sure about. But realistically, when you're in high school, no one's actually talking to you about the different industries or the different roles they're just talking to you, or honestly, you're assuming the roles that you've seen on TV or the things that you see in the media, the
Right.
lawyers, you know.
Yeah.
So when we think about why, and to answer, maybe not so much answer the question, but think about how much of this is brought to our awareness. Like I came across technology by accident.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything that anybody even in college sat me down and said was, here's a potential career in marketing in technology. So I feel like maybe if we could start addressing some of that, the
Yeah.
awareness, and at what point, before we make a massive investment in college, what these roles could potentially be, I feel like we could start to eliminate the reasons why we only know nursing or why we only know doctors or you know.
Absolutely. You know, would I rather have come up here and said, I can explain 100% of that difference and here is the solution? I would have done so. I would have preferred the 10x kind of slides, like, I figured it all out. I didn't. There is many aspects that you're alluding to, a couple of them, you know, on the selection, how they're growing up, as well questions about, you know, what stereotypical male, female, that are a huge part of this. I hope maybe changes your view a little bit. There is also a little angle of like thinking about the purpose of the job. That could maybe change it a tiny bit. Does that, if you do that, in 5 years we come back and like, I'm like, done, job done? Unfortunately, I don't think so. There is many things that have to be fixed and are broken. And I'm doing more research on it, but I'm not so optimistic that I'm going to come back next year. I was like, now I'm done.
Hi. Have you thought about how to add meaning to mundane jobs? Right in front row. Oh. right here. You know, how do you add meaning in some of the more things that will probably be replaced someday by AI, but frankly, some of the more mundane aspects of collection and the need to do financial reporting and,
Yeah.
you know, some basic stuff that it's tough to really, other than...
I think, in fact, there could be meaning in many jobs. So I'm during my sabbatical, I spent some time at Uber, too, and still work with them. You know, they're drivers. Sounds like a mundane job, maybe, you know, driving around. There are many differences in how that can create some sort of meaning. You know, dignity, how you get treated, how you think about the job going forward. If you think of the finance industry, you know, I think like you look at trust levels. You know, that plummeted during the crisis dramatically. Probably something at the practices that have been done previously. Just adding then a foundation to it is not going to fix that. That's not really meaning. You know, you can print it in a recruitment brochure and say like, and we also give to the Met a little bit. Like, I don't think that's really cutting it. It has to be something that you feel on a daily basis. The design aspect of the job are some of those. You know, like giving autonomy, feeling competence. That's part. But also that you feel that you're actually doing something that creates value to society. That doesn't need to be nonprofit at all. You know, there are like a lot of for-profit jobs that create value, and that aspect. And in our case, you know, how the corporate social responsibility that we tested. You know, how you do your business also can create some of the purpose. Is that hard to do? Yes, because it's like it has to be something that is ingrained in the whole organization. You can't just tag it on. It has to be in the DNA. You know, I mean, people are not stupid. They know when it's just an attached foundation that like is some window dressing. It has to be like the whole business has to be some sort of transform. And you know, on the positive note, I think there is a lot of strides in that area to change many industries that, if you look at it, are not children's hospitals. Sounds worse?
Salesforce.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm wondering, given that you frame this largely as a like perception problem, and that like your last slide, for example, with all the different industries, right? People trust finance the least. Have you looked into the women who do go into finance and why? Because I'm wondering if they see some sort of meaning in their work that thus can be told to other women that we're not seeing on the outside.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you looked into that.
So I haven't looked at that, but my hunch would be that there is definitely some, I mean, there is meaning, you know, I'm definitely not bashing, we want to bash the finance industry at all. There is a lot of value that gets created. And that's important to understand. A lot has to do with the perception, maybe past actions that can be rectified in either changing the business really, or also like thinking about like, you know, communicating the good things that are done in the right way. But I want to emphasize again, this is not, I don't see that as a branding exercise, you know, changing. It's not about marketing, you know, people have to feel that it actually has impact and purpose and meaning in their lives. And, you know, going back on those attributes, I'm also not saying income doesn't matter. You know, of course it matters. Like, it was in this room, it was like number 2. But there are just many more aspects of the job, especially in this war for talent, you know, where they all fight for you, and you have many, many choices to be made. I think it's important that it's sold the full package that has monetary job designs and also purpose aspects attached to it. Maybe 2 more questions.
I don't know if this is a question or not, but I found it very interesting that in the trust, you know, people trust the financial services industry the least, and they trust technology the most. Right. Now, given that, you know, what's happening with Facebook and Google and everything, was this study done, or?
So I didn't do that study. So could be that study is all screwed up. I don't know. You know, if you look at our MBA, you know, there are more female. It's actually the parity in like what in our MBA students, whether they go into tech and media, is like combined. You know, there are more female going into tech and media of our MBA students than the male students do. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a good question. I actually don't know.
So the more women are going into tech than the finance, as you're saying. So is it that women are not involved as such in the other industry? Like, yeah. So is it due to that we feel that the gender difference over there, or that the trust issue as well over there? Because wherever women are involved, they are doing multitasking. There's a trust is getting built as tech and industry. We just saw this slide earlier a few minutes back. So why would be that difference more in there? Like there is no trust in the no. Hold on a second.
So if I understand your questions correctly, like. If you look at what I only wanted to show you with that trust slide, you know, this is trust from consumers. It's not just employee. I mean, there's like a bunch of like random, hopefully representative sample of the population. But if that reflects a little bit how much we see that there is purpose, helpful for others, you know, useful for society, if that correlates with that trust, it looks like the finance industry is not doing so great. So that people, when they choose between a job in tech, maybe, and a job in a big bank, they're like, well, I'd rather work in tech. I think that is more useful to society. I can actually change stuff for the good, not as much in finance. So that's the only thing I want. And it turns out that those preferences do explain part of why our MBA students, at least, go into finance less than the men's do.
But is it due to that the gender difference over there again, because women are not getting paid enough that compared to the men, or something else? Because that we have seen it not in just finance but everywhere. That difference is getting more and more. And I would like to know again how to reduce that gap as well. Are there any right steps to take care, or we just have to wait for the opportunity?
Yeah, so there is worst case scenario, there's about 90% of that stuff, which I can't explain, which is going to be hard to do. I have no answer to this. I mean, I can speculate, but what I showed you doesn't speak to that at all. Has to be fixed, whatever it is. Discrimination, the career path, flexibility on the job, the culture, and whatnot. But there is a part of it that has to do also with, like, female, on average, would like to have more jobs that are meaningful on, like, those purpose attributes. And if banks, for example, want to increase the diversity, they have to fix all the other 90% and work on those 10% as well. Thank you so much.